am technically challenged, so this is a big feat. I know that Brett we talked before, and he has never used Skype before. He loaded it just for this chat.
We're in the same boat then.
Hello.
We only talk to our nieces.
Hello? All right. Okay.
Okay.
Brett? No?
I can see you.
Oh, okay. You can see me. Is that you, Brett? We've got you. Houston.
Yeah, you've got me. You've got me.
Houston, we have liftoff. Now, if only I could figure out how to get you all on the screen. So say hello. Brett, meet our international group. Guys, introduce yourselves. Tell Brett where you're from and how you see a place to call home. Brian, start with you.
Hey, I'm from Methuen, Massachusetts, near Boston, and I see it through Acorn TV.
Okay.
Carolyn?
Yeah, hi Brett, I'm Carolyn from Los Angeles, and I also watch it on Acorn.
Brett, next to Amber and Autumn, they are here in Staten Island, and they have a fabulous page of their own called the Silver Petticoat Review that does marvelous stories and recaps, all kinds of things on period drama. So say hello.
Hi,
Hello,
I'm Amber. I'm Autumn. Yeah, we're from. We probably live here in New York City, but we're actually from Arizona. So.
And we watch Acorn. Obviously.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for Acorn.
Right. Right.
And Diane, say hello to Brett.
Hi, I'm from the Netherlands, and I watch it on DVD and through BBC, and when it's on the Netherlands, I watch it on Omroep Max.
I'm not hearing Diane.
Diane, can you turn up your... Oh, dear.
Okay, I'm not sure.
I'm almost hearing you.
Hi.
Yeah, you're very low. Hi, Diane. You're very, very low. I can hardly hear you, but
Okay, I will find how to do.
All right. Well, while we figure out these technical things, Brett, I want to thank you for joining us. Just to tell you a little bit about the group, I know you're familiar with us. We're about to hit 5,000 members from all over the world. We did a poll recently, and I think we had over 40 countries that are regularly watching out of the 144. It's a great group. They're committed to the show. They watch it and talk about it from season to season, and they've got a lot of questions. So I can't see you yet, but let's start with Carolyn.
Okay. Okay, I guess I'll start.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Brett, you've said, I think I read an interview recently where you said that you're more selective with some of the roles, I guess you would say, given that you have this regular gig with The Place to Call Home. I'm just wondering if there's any other type of genre that you would like to play that you haven't yet.
I suppose, coming off this, it'd be quite nice to do something, something contemporary. As far as genre goes, look, I've sort of covered a few over the years, I suppose. It really, I sort of make choices pretty much on the role, I think, and obviously the script. And if it happens to be a genre that I have or haven't played in before. But it really is more about, I suppose these days it's about a director and it's about the script. I mean, my wife always says that she'd like to see me do some comedy. I obviously do things late at night that she finds. But yeah, I suppose that's one area that I really haven't popped into. I suppose, yeah. Except for maybe theatre when I was sort of doing some Noel Coward or whatever, and some Alan Bennett a few years ago. Yeah.
Brett, I can't see you guys, so this is like radio for me. But
Can I do something at my end, do you think, Susan, to try and get my image? Or
I cannot see anybody except myself.
Yeah, I think Brett needs to turn his camera on. That's the problem. So
I thought I had it on, but
Brett, when we spoke before, you had look on the bottom. There should be a camera icon. Click on that.
goodness me, sorry about this.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Brett, we know it worked because we did it before.
Yeah, I know. Good.
All right.
Yeah, I've got you there.
You see me? Okay.
Ah. Now I'm seeing
See something.
a gentleman with glasses
That's
on
me.
my screen now.
I see Brett.
Oh, you can see
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Listen,
we see you.
okay, this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to leave you guys to talk. Take this yourself for the next few minutes. I'm going to have to sign out and come back onto the conversation. Okay? Okay, so carry on.
I just had one follow-up question, Brett. This is Carolyn again. But Bevan Lee is such a fantastic writer, and you say you're going to obviously choose other roles based on the writer, and I think that'll be hard given he's so great. Are there moments in the show where sometimes it's not the words, it's just the looks or the faces that you guys make? Are those, instead of dialogue, are those written into the script as well, or is that something that kind of happens while you're just shooting the show?
That really is adhering to Bevan's, because it's incredibly reductive the way that he writes, you know, in this sort of this melodrama genre. The only words we have, and we never improvise, and you've probably heard that before, but we can't improvise. There is such a style to the dialogue. There's no fat to the dialogue. There's nothing extraneous. So the looks you're talking about, I think the more comfortable we've become with the show and with knowing how to play it, I think that those looks just come out of knowing and knowing the genre, I think, a bit better, and honouring the pause. I think he certainly writes. He's very definite about the pausing. That's in the script. But I think a lot of it, I suppose, is also just our choice as actors to play with that. And the more I think that you work with each other, you know what those rhythms are, and you know when a look is valuable or when a but it is also the nature of television, that quite often, at the end of a scene you do cut to. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think you're actually talking about more the pauses within the scene and the looks within the scene, the glances within the scene. And that's pretty much up to us. It's obviously you do rely on your directors a lot there as well, because you don't want to overdo that. Then it becomes a type of drama that it can almost fall maybe into sort of more soap territory. Then I think you've got to be careful of that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's it's done really well. It's done really well.
Yeah. I think there's a degree of subtlety about what we try to achieve on screen, and quite often that subtlety can be achieved with less dialogue.
Brett, can you tell us a little bit about the process from the time you get the script, your first table read, until you get a show in the can?
So we receive a script probably 2-3 prior to shooting, and obviously, you know, if that's the first one of the series, then we're not working on anything else. We just devote ourselves to the 2 hours of TV that we have on the page. But then once we roll into it, we're receiving the new scripts about 2 to 3 weeks beforehand. We're shooting, we're up and running, we're shooting. We shoot roughly 2 hours, 2 episodes over the course of 3 weeks. And it's a process of, once you have the script, what I do, I read it a couple of times. I familiarize myself with what it's saying, with what it's trying to say. Various rehearsal. Our rehearsal process is very much sitting around a table. So in between our shooting days, we'll have an afternoon off. We'll go into the office. We'll sit down with our director, the new director, of course, because we have a different director for each block of what we call a block is 2 hours of 2 episodes of television. And it's really a matter of just going through anything that you feel isn't working for you on the page. So our rehearsals are really more about getting the script right more than performance. So that's sort of the thing. So for me, and learning the lines is really the last part of it. I think it's understanding the work helps you to learn it, that's pretty much. And you allow a little bit of room, you know, as I said earlier, there's no room for improvising in the style that we play, but it is always nice to arrive on set not knowing exactly, you know, what you're going to do, because I think that element of not so much surprise, but you know, you can block something too heavily and you feel like you're in a straitjacket, and it's nice to have a little bit of room to move.
I just want to ask one more question about I don't know, I know that Australia is huge, and that, so do you live in the area, or do you have to uproot your life for the filming season?
So I live on the east coast of Australia. I live in Melbourne, and we shoot in Sydney. And so I definitely have a little pad in Sydney. So when I work there, our studio is central Sydney. And the location, however, is about an hour out of town, southwest, in a township called Camden, the Southern Highlands. So, and the ratio, in my mind, our ratio of studio to location, I think it's probably sitting at about 60 location, 40 studio. I mean, you know, embedded, you know, if our budget allows, I think we'd probably like to push that to sort of 70-30. But that's what really jacks up the cost of our show. I know in American terms, I'm sure 1.5 mil an episode probably isn't that much, but for our over here, that's a lot of money, and a lot of it goes because the fact that it is period drama, and we are on location so much.
Brett, in America, we have people who get paid tens of millions just to perform in a show every week.
I thought you were going to say that's just the potato.
Exactly.
I've got a dream about that. Well, that's the money, though. No,
it could happen. I know. Too much money. Just too much. Diane, say hello to Brett. I know you've been looking forward to meeting him.
That's true. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
There. Hello.
Hi.
We haven't seen each other for a long time.
Yes. Greetings from all the Dutch fans, especially from my grandmother. She's almost 84 years old and a big fan of A Place to Call Home, just like my daughter and my mother too. So 4 generations are waiting for season 5 here to start, which won't be around August next year. So we have to be very patient. Another question. On social media, there are often comments about George being weak, that he makes the wrong decisions. How do you see George? What sort of man do you think he is?
So I have to apologise. I missed I think I may have got the meaning of the question, but would you mind just repeating it for me? Sorry.
On social media, there are often comments about George being weak and that he makes the wrong decisions. How do you see?
Being weak.
Yeah. What sort of man do you think he is?
No, I don't. And I'm certainly not offended by those comments. I get them myself. If people are brave enough, they actually ask me that in the street. I think to play a true gentleman on screen and a man that wants to please everybody, which he does, that's not an easy thing to do. So I actually see, in a way, I think that it takes a lot of strength to try and please and to try and smooth the water for everybody. And that's, I've always seen that playing the gentleman isn't always the easiest thing to do. And as an actor, it's not always easy either. But I honour what Bevan created, and I will always play George that way. I mean, we do see moments where he rises above and he asserts himself and whatever. But essentially, we can't forget that this is a drama. Really, it's not a love story between George and Sarah. It's actually a friendship story between Sarah and Elizabeth. And I think, and I don't mind saying this, but for us males in the team, we try our best to support the really strong females. And that's what first drew me to the project, because I'd never seen such strong female roles, on so well-defined female roles on page before. And I often joke that, we, the male actors, know our place in the show, and we are there to serve a purpose. And that's the nature of what Bevan has written, and that's what I play. So I hope does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
David, do you hear some kind of interference? Brett,
I'm hearing a lot of interference.
Yeah.
I think it's Brian's mic or something.
Oh, Brian?
If he could just
Brian?
mute his mic.
No. Brian? Oh. Sorry. Now I really messed everything up.
I'll turn my mic off. Make sure it's off.
Okay. Okay, everybody back. All right. Brett, I noticed that you have a real, Diane said some people see George as weak. In the new episodes that I've seen, George is not weak. I think he's got a challenge now, and he's rising to the challenge. You and Jenny have you guys are great together. Can you talk, and you've worked with a lot of wonderful women in the past, Nicole Kidman and a lot of other people. How is it that as an actor you can capture that kind of magic? You can't always do it, but you two obviously have it. How does it happen?
It really is. I use the word rhythm, quite often describing performances, and I think particularly in film and television, as opposed to theatre, where you really can put a mask on, and whereas with film and television, there's a degree of subtlety, and it depends on someone's rhythm, and you can't always change that rhythm. It's inherent in you, and when two people come together on set and those rhythms are complementary, It's I suppose you could call it acting styles. I don't know, but it's more about just one's manners, I think, and sometimes it's so complimentary you just don't even have to work at it, and it's just a nice whatever you do or whatever Jenny does, I know, and we have that unspoken understanding, and but that and that's just a look. What can I say? It's a real joy to work with her. I love her. I think she's one of the kindest and supportive women to work with. Always beautifully prepared but also a sense of fun. And so even though the scenes can be fairly tense, and we've had a few of those, there's never any pressure with Jenny. And yeah, we sort of. Yeah, we just. It's a pity that some of those scenes are so horrendous because it's there. But having said that, they're actually easy to do with her because, as I say, she's our rhythms just are in balance. They are indeed. And sometimes you have to work at it. Sometimes there's more acting involved than other times. Yeah, but it is nice when you don't have to sort of try so hard. Yeah.
Are you drawn to the period?
Actually, sorry to interrupt you, Sue. I actually have a lot of people that say to me, "Oh, gee, they look so nice together on screen, and what a pity that Regina had to be Regina and all that sort of business." Of course, Jenny's always joking that she'd like to be Regina to sort of turn a new leaf and all that sort of business. Well, wait.
George, all the characters had gone through, we're now into season 5 and we see how everyone has evolved and how the families have evolved. How did you see George when you first saw him on the page, and how do you see him now?
Goodness, I always saw him as a man that some of the weakness perhaps that we're referring to is the fact that he follows his heart, and is that a weakness? Possibly the consequences haven't always been terrific for him. So I suppose it was maybe in the last couple of seasons where, as you said earlier, he finds a direction for himself. He hops into politics as a way to define himself, I suppose, outside of the Bly Empire, and also away from Sarah, to try and find himself. I hope that's what we've done I hope that's what we've done recently, and I think what you'll get to see coming up. I think we see that he does find a voice for himself. But I've enjoyed the journey. Even in the beginning when I was, he's being torn between, his mother and his, the woman that he loved, and I had no problem with that. I enjoyed playing that, I'm very much one of those actors that I'm not in charge of his destiny, and I often say to Bevan, I might ring him and say, look, how do you see that? How do you think I should play this? Because I'm not the writer. I love being an actor, and I respect what we all do in our profession, and I don't want to step over boundaries. And so whatever course he provides for me to play, I'm just happy to play it. Not to say that at times I might look at something else or not so much wish for something else. But I like not controlling that journey, and I like my input into the production. I don't, I'm an actor. That's it, and his words serve me very well. Yeah. So, but there's always talk. I remember in the second season we were talking about, trying to. Particularly male directors would come on and they, not the female directors, but the male directors would come on and say, oh, really want to see. We want to sort of beef him up. We really want to. I said, you know, I'm pretty happy. I'm okay. You might want to beef him up because maybe that's not the man that you, or that, you know, you wouldn't. That may not be your ideal of a man on TV, but I'm okay with it. You know, I set out to play a gentle man. I set out to play something I hadn't seen on television myself for a long time. And the actors that I used to respond to were the Sam Neil's and the John Hargraves, a very, very fine actor that Australia had and we no longer have. But he was a leading film actor and theatre, but particularly film in the 70s and early 80s. And they sort of embodied a different type of, you know, male to what we see on our screens now. You know, there was a gentleness, there was a sensitivity, not afraid to be that. There was something manly about that back then, whereas now, you know, to play that, it's a rarity to find a role like George, I think, these days, and that's why I relish playing it. And I've got nothing against our male directors; they're fantastic. You know, it's interesting that our wonderful female directors really embrace what we try to do with George, whereas the males want to sort of beef him up, and I find that's interesting. That says quite a lot about perhaps how we feel our own masculinity is, I think. No, I waffled on there. I do apologise.
No, you know, as I shared with you before, I did not know who you were until I saw that very first episode of A Place to Call Home on Acorn and got hooked. But as I've gotten to know you over these years, I kind of got curious and did a little Googling and have started to watch some of your past work. You have such a long career in such a big body of successful work. Kudos. We all enjoy it.
You're being very kind. You are being very kind.
Can you share with us, you know, a capsule version of what your life as an actor has been since you were, I think you started working when you were a teenager.
Yes,
I don't think.
I found I was struggling at school. I had no interest in being at school. For whatever reason, and this is very unlike me, and I wouldn't think of doing it then, but I enrolled in the school debating team, and it used to terrify me, but somehow I got through it. My mother saw that I had an interest in this. She saw I didn't have an interest in school. She enrolled me into a drama workshop at the Opera House and in Sydney, and I went along there. It was a kids' workshop, but I went along and they were playing with video cameras. It wasn't not about getting up in front of people and performing. It was more this sort of thing they were doing with video cameras, and we'd put little scenes together. And one of the kids one day said, "Oh, I'm going off to an audition for a TV commercial," and I said, "Oh, how do you? Oh, you need to get an agent." And that following week, without my mother, because at the time, that's another story, but we might anyway. My mum, I didn't tell my mum, and I took 3 days off school, went into the city. I just had a little shot at myself, and I went round to some agencies, and I just knocked on doors. Someone took me on. The following week, I went for a casting for a TV commercial, paid X amount of money. I then told my mother, "This is what I've done," but before you get angry, Mum, this is what I'm going to get paid. And honestly, Susan, that just led to more work. I convinced my parents my mother that I could make a go of this, and I think I was probably about 17. And fortunately, then I landed there was a very high rating serial here called Sons and Daughters, and I landed a role in that. And I then got myself a much better agent, an agent than whom I'm with now, Robin Gardner. And she said, "Oh, look, I like you doing this for 3 months, but then I'm going to take you out of that, and then we're going to start being a little bit more discerning about what we do." And so then there was Australia was producing through a company called Kennedy Miller and the Miller being George Miller of Babe and Mad Max fame. They had created a TV company, a production company, making a lot of really very good miniseries. And fortunately I managed to do a miniseries called Vietnam that was very well received, and you know, somewhat. And then so there was film work and miniseries work and whatever, but then TV came along again in the form of a show called The Country Practice, which once again was a top rating series here, a much loved series. And I do remember the reason for me taking that, apart from the fact that it was a great show and I wanted to be part of it, I'd actually just met I don't mind saying this, I just met my now wife. And I remember just wanting to create stability, and I thought, what better way to do it than to hop into TV and get paid for it. The contract was X amount of a couple of years or whatever. And I remember then just feeling I was making the career work for me in a way. And that, so it was sort of a calculated decision to do that. I mean, I could have maybe not done A Country Practice, and I don't know where I would have ended up. Perhaps I'd be in America now. I don't know. But no, look, it did very well for me. But once again, my agent suggested I only stayed there for a certain period of time. It seems longer. People think it was longer, but it was only just under 2 years. And then I went to the Flying Doctors, and part of my reason for making that choice is because I actually had always loved the city of Melbourne, and this provided me an opportunity to live in a city that I loved. So, and I've been in Melbourne pretty much ever since. So I don't know. It's nice to think that your work can help out your personal life, which it kind of did. And then the roles after that, pretty much, I didn't have to think too much about it. And I think when you're an actor in your 20s and early 30s, at least in this country, and if you're not, shot to serious, whatever you want to call it, stardom, fame, whatever, which I wasn't, and I'm quite honest about that. And the shows that I did, Country Practice, Flying Doctors, they were big in our country, and they certainly sold into Europe, but they weren't going to sort of open doors for me in London or in Germany or anything like that. As I say, they weren't sort of Home and Away or Neighbours. So I'm probably talking about shows that you guys don't get. I do apologise.
Brett, I'd never heard of any of them until 2 years ago, and now I've seen most of them. I know all about your Flying Doctor days and all these other incredible shows. You really have achieved what I think should be a dream of the actor, and that is to stay consistently employed. And
but I do have to correct you on that, because I was just about to say to you that the roles just came and I didn't think too much about it. I just expected life would go on. And then when I was probably sort of early 40s, mid 40s, that my age, that things just didn't happen. All of a sudden, I don't know what it was. It was odd, and I had to. It was a very it was an interesting time for me, because I had to. It was a great experience in a way, as lousy as it sounds. It was actually interesting because I had to define myself by something more than what I did. And I think as males, we and perhaps females, but I think females are better at not doing this. But as guys, I think what we do for a living really defines who we are. And I felt adrift for a couple of years, really. And a few people around me, family, said, look, we understand it must be whatever, but you're so many other things. You're a son, you're a husband, you're a brother, it sounds cliched and trite, but I think it was an interesting lesson for me. I took time out, and then I actually made a decision, because I kind of felt like the business had fallen out of love with me, and I was almost falling out of love with the business, and I didn't want that to happen. So I took myself out of it, and I didn't audition. I didn't want to audition. I didn't want to be. I honestly wanted to just have a break from it, because I wasn't enjoying where it was going, and I thought I never wanted to be an actor that's bitter about the experience, because it's always a choice for you to do it, and then it's a choice for you not to do it. So it was honestly, it was probably about, goodness me, going on a year, and I kept myself busy, but I certainly wasn't acting. And I got a call from my agent about a place to call home, and I hadn't read anything. I didn't want to read anything. They said, look, it's the new drama here. You should read it. We think it's terrific. And I didn't want to read it because I didn't want to get interested and disappointment, whatever. I read it, and it was extraordinary. I hadn't read anything with the largesse, with the finesse, with the quality, with the big picture stuff. I'd never read anything like this, and I certainly didn't think that Australian television could produce it, particularly a commercial network. So I said, of course I love it, but this person's going to get it, this person's going to get it. It was that good. I thought the role was that good. Anyway, one thing led to another. I auditioned for it. You invest in it, and because I kind of thought I could play this role. I knew George. I knew George, and you don't often, as an actor, find that. I just knew I could play him. So I auditioned, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And after 2 weeks, I called my agent. I said, no, they've moved on. And I was like, okay, well, see, that's why I didn't want to audition. Forget it now. And probably a month and a half later, another call from my agent. They suddenly want to fly me up to Sydney from Melbourne for an audition for this. And I said, are you kidding? I mean, I didn't even get a call back. What's happened now? And no, really, look, I really don't think I want to invest in this. I've already been disappointed once. It's going to happen again, blah, blah. Anyway, obviously flew up and, I got the role. So prior to this role, it was very quiet for me. And so it was lovely to get this thing, to play this wonderful character, but also I came back into it, I think, a better person, because I really cherish working, and I very much cherish the quality. And I remember I made a pact. I said it to Michelle. I said, look, I'm never going to complain about an early call time, about late finishes. I'm not going to, because I know what it's like not to do this. And hopefully some of my cast members see this. They'll probably say, oh, he's obviously, I've heard him complain, but no. So it's just been from the start. It's just been this really, saving thing for me. It was a saviour for me, and yeah, the journey's been quite extraordinary.
Brett, before I turn it over to somebody else, you talked about working with Jenny. You talked about working with Marta. Tell us about working with Noni.
Goodness, where do I start? The only time prior to this I worked with Noni was in a TV series that she was, of course, the lead in, called City Homicide. I came on as a guest for a couple of episodes, and there's one particular scene where I had to come into her office. She's the head sergeant, in the police department, whatever, behind the desk, and I've got to come in there and I've got to really be assertive and control her and tell her this and tell her that, and it's Noni Hazelhurst, and goodness me, and I just couldn't make the scene work. And she got up from the desk, and she's, I remember her. I can't remember what the direction was, because my director wasn't helping me, and she just gave me a couple of pointers of how she thought I could make the scene better, because she wanted me to succeed for the sake of the scene. Completely selfless, of course, because she's playing the character with authority. But I just remembered the generosity. It was all about making the scene work, and of course then A Place to Call Home comes along, and she's that same person. And as you know, and I've said it a few times, but anger, I'm not great at conveying anger. I'm not great at portraying anger. And we've obviously had scenes, you know, Elizabeth and George, where there's been a lot of anger. And once again, you know, she'd take me aside and, look, have you thought about, and just always just willing to help, because it's the work. You know, it's about the work with Noni, and that makes her quite selfless, and generous, but just very good. I mean, just, you know, you're watching, you're in a scene together, and then you're off screen, you know, feeding lines because she's got the close up, and you just look at what she does with every moment. You know, there's not a wasted opportunity on screen. She fills every moment with something, and that's, you know, I'm simply not that good. I know I'm not. But when I'm watching someone like that fill every moment with truth, by the way, and there's also technique involved, but she makes it look completely honest, and that to me is the sign of a remarkable actor, where there's just nothing dead. There's no dead time. You know, you're using every moment you have to convey what you need to convey for that character. And you know, all of that aside, Offset just so down to earth, and you know, you must understand, in our country, Noni is she's royalty. You know, literally, her body of work has been extraordinary, and yeah. And I've got to say, I've been fortunate enough to see her one-woman show called Mother, which she's touring, and I think she has a season at a fabulous theatre in Sydney. It was written for her. And we saw it last year, and just remarkable work, remarkable. Yeah, I mean, I was tears. You know, tears. It was just beautiful and funny, and but no, she's the. As we would say over here, she's the real deal.
We see that. We see that. Amber, Autumn, got a question for Brett?
Yeah, sure. We are actually curious about Sarah and George, without giving away too many spoilers, because we actually really enjoy the love story. What can we expect in season 5 about the development of their relationship, and what would you like to see happen in the end?
Well, I'm not giving too much away. When does 5 start screening, by the way?
Okay, so it starts. Yeah, it starts in November, or I think November 23rd on Acorn. So that for the people in the U.S.
Two episodes a week.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not giving anything away then. The first time we see, the first episode that you'll see, we're jumping 4 years, and so we see a family. You know, we see Sarah and George with their little son David, and you see a family unit as much as they can be. They can't live together, of course, because George is still married to Regina. But you see stability, which was lovely to play after all of, you know, lots of turmoil, and and I think for the duration of season 5, for George, it's about keeping that family unit together and moving it forward. But no, you see a couple united. But you know, it can't be always united, otherwise.
Well, there has to be conflict.
Very boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Where would I like to see it finish? Oh goodness, I don't want to see it finish. I don't know. I don't want to see it end. So,
yeah.
Keep the trip going, I say.
Yeah.
Well, there are things like prequels and sequels, which could continue the story for a very long time. Diane, I want to give you what would you like to ask Brett? Brett, I have to tell you that part of the reason that I've got interested in some of your other shows was because Diane, who is a big fan of yours and
Yes, I know.
knows a lot about you. So she was always mentioning different shows that you'd be on, and so I'm not the only one. Many of us have seen Flying Doctors and seen you and Nicole Kidman together, and a lot of your television appearances, and a lot of that has to do with Diane's talking about them.
Absolutely. Diane was first on board many years ago, supporting the Flying Doctors and supporting, I know myself and various other actors from there. You've been incredibly supportive since. I think you know more about what I've done than I do, to be quite honest. And that's the truth. Thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
I'm not always great at expressing that, but I do appreciate it.
Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what to ask anymore.
All right. Well,
I love Diane. I love what you said earlier about the generations that enjoy the show. I think, I think that's one of the lovely things about A Place to Call Home, isn't it? That it it's intergenerational. It's the demographics, are really quite broad. So I loved hearing you say that.
Before Carolyn, I'm going to go to you next, but Brett, can you please tell us what that magnificent piece of art is in back of you?
Obviously, it's on purpose. No, I just thought you might like to see some Indigenous art. This is an artist called Kathy Marenka, and the piece is called Desert Wildflowers, and we fell in love with it. She had a show here. She's a South Australian painter. And she had a show a few years ago now, and what I liked about it is dot painting, but it's almost got like an impressionist sort of feel to it. A lot of dot painting art can be a little more aggressive, for want of a better word, whereas I actually found this is almost like a piece of impressionism, and I love the colours, and I just thought you might like to, I thought it was quite a nice backdrop, and a nice segue also into the current season that we do sort of explore the Indigenous acceptance of or our lack of acceptance of Indigenous people in this country back in the 50s, and we explore that issue through an artist. So I suppose it's a little bit a nice segue to that.
Are you a collector?
I wished I had the funds, but yeah, I do I've always loved art, and we have a few pieces, little things that photography. I've got some framed photography everywhere. I do. I'm pretty selective about that. I've always had an interest. I think if I hadn't been an actor, I would love to have been an architect. And I love all manner of design, and I find balance in being surrounded by things that that mean something to me. Aesthetically, things are important. And that's why I love. And I'm not just saying this, but that's why I'm also very proud of A Place to Call Home, because I just think visually I love the way it looks, and I love the costumes. I love the detail of it really satisfies me, and because that's very important to me. So whenever I do a role, talking about process, costume is so incredibly important. I need that to be right before I can sort of move anywhere else. And I think that's all just got to do with having balance around you and being appropriate, I think.
Carolyn.
I build things. I design pieces of furniture and I have them built. And I can't. I wish I could. I'm not going to touch anything because this is actually an iPad that I've got leaning up against something, so I'm not going to. But no, I love designing stuff, and yeah, it's a bit of a passion.
Carolyn.
Well, you talked about the costumes in the period. Sometimes George is so bundled up with his three-piece suits, and how do you feel about your wardrobe?
I love my wardrobe. This is interesting, getting back to our male directors that come on, and there's one in particular, and Mark won't mind me saying this, but he's always trying to get George out of the suits and into the riding gear, into the moleskins and the open neck shirts and the. We actually had an argument about one time, but I like being defined by that. I like the consistency of seeing him in suits, and I know that we can say a lot. We can suggest a lot by freeing him up and loosening the tie and whatever, and often we do that, and we've probably done that a bit more in this sort of in the last season that you're about to see, because we see him at home. We see him, on the carpet playing with his son. Playing trains with his son. So we put him in knits. We put him in sleeveless knits or jumpers, and it's a much softer, more family look. But as long as there's politics, there's always room for a navy suit, I think.
Brett,
I like ties as well. I'm very particular about the ties.
Do you like clothes in real life?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of, and it's not about money. It's not about pretension. I think it's just, as I say, I think it's about being appropriate. And I mean, I don't think you can be interested in design or without wanting to be interested in how you look. And as I say, it's got nothing to do with money. That's the great thing when you travel and you go to some cities, and the way people just throw things together. It's I love watching that. If I travel, I always say we always do the art galleries and whatever, but essentially I do what I do here anywhere, which is I love sitting in cafes. I love watching people, and you hook into the fashion of the city, or and it influences how you think about things, I think that the whole world of design and fashion is it's not important to everybody, and I'm saying it's not it's not life or death, but I do appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Brian, can you hear? Can you ask a question?
Yes, I know a lot of people have been talking about how George is at weak. I think that it's more of a George was naive, and I think that he's becoming more clever and playing the long game. So what do you think about that? Do you think that George is actually a little bit more clever now, less naive?
Yeah, I think I think you're probably right. I don't think he had to be clever. His life prior to meeting Sarah, his life was, it was going along okay. He was he was on the market. I mean, he'd lost his wife. He was still grieving for his wife, but family affairs were fine, and the business was fine. The Bly Empire was doing okay. So he was insulated really from life's worries and troubles, because he could be, because that's what wealth can do for you. But it's really only when he let Sarah into his heart, that he opened that heart up, that I think he started making decisions that were based on from the heart. And whether he's become cleverer, he probably has. I suppose then that implies that, what does that mean he wasn't clever? Or I just don't think he had to. He was protected, and he'd probably been protected.
I saw him as naive. is naive, is what I think the word is, and then he became wise to the things going on around him.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's well put. Thank you. I agree with that. That's what's well articulated. Yeah.
Brett, the other fabulous woman that you work with is Sarah Weissman, Sass.
Yes.
She's so wonderful. Talk to us a little bit about her.
Yeah, she's dynamic. In fact, it's funny how you sometimes find this. I have two older sisters, and Sass plays my younger sister. I know, but she reminds me of one of my sisters. You know, she's likes to tease a little bit. You know, likes to tease me a little bit, and which I take it from her because I just do because I love it. So there really is this lovely brother and sister feeling that I suppose once again, did we create it? I don't know if you create that. I think it was just there. It was a lovely piece of casting, and you know, I'm going to repeat myself, but once again, just so prepared, just so professional, so about the work, and that's a joy. You know, when the focus is the work, to make the work better. It's not about the person; it's about what we're doing. And Craig, by the way, is exactly the same. That's why they obviously together, you know, get along so well. And yeah, but just I kind of think in this show that it's like, you know, when you see a fairly ugly man and he's got the most beautiful wife, and he says that, and the guy says, "Oh, you're punching above your weight." I think that's the term. In this show, I kind of feel like that. Every day it's a challenge just to try and keep up, just to try and I'm not asking for compliments, but I do feel like that because I'm surrounded by just really talented people. But you kind of just hope you can sneak through, really.
Before I have something else I want to ask you, but if you're wondering who the two lovely people in the middle of the screen are, who unfortunately do not want to speak, that is Kathy Bowles. Don't remember the name of the place. She lives in Australia, but she has sent me pictures and it's gorgeous. She was one of the very first people to become a member of our group. And she told me a lot about Australia and really kind of started me on this little love affair that I embarked on. So that's Kathy, who doesn't want to ask a question. And
Why
next to why not? Sitting next to her is her son David, who is our technical guru, and he is recording this so that we can share it with all of our members who are anxiously waiting to hear from you.
Well, I'm glad we have one technical guru.
You could have used his help earlier. I think we all could have.
Thank you for looking after that for us. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. Did somebody ask something?
It's me, Susan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kathy.
I didn't want to ask a question because I couldn't think of anything to ask. I thought everyone else would think of the ones. And we live near Yeppoon. Brett, do you know where Yeppoon is? Near Rockhampton.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Queensland.
That's where we live. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. We'll turn the microphone off now because it causes interference.
Okay. Thank you. Nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
I think, you know, I mentioned about what Amber and Autumn do. Their whole everything they write about, and they write about with intelligence and passion. It's really a wonderful site.
I'd love to read some.
Thank you.
I will send you the link for sure. But their passion is romance. Everything from Hallmark movies to the biggest. They've seen every time that somebody else makes Jane Eyre or Little Women, they are there hanging on every word and telling us all about it, and we love them for it.
Hence the in Sarah and George.
Oh, of course, we cover period dramas and romance and romanticism and A Place to Call Home just fits into what we cover on our site so well because we love covering international shows and spreading the word about them because a lot of people haven't heard about these shows, but amazingly enough, there are so many people looking for shows just like this one, and we try to spread the word as much as we can. So
yeah, and especially with you talking about playing a gentleman, people are looking for shows because they're so rare with characters like that.
Oh, for sure. People definitely are for really good writing that doesn't focus back on vulgarity, but focuses on really, really great writing. And people are interested in that for sure. So we appreciate the show. We love the show and try to spread the word as much as we can. And and we cover romance a lot too. So the period dramas and the romance. Yeah.
Carolyn, you work in my old stomping grounds. You're right in the heart of Hollywood, and you see a lot of media, a lot of television shows, a lot of series. We're inundated with them. Why do you like A Place to Call Home? Why are you so drawn to it?
I just think it's funny too because a friend of mine who has kind of, I guess, the same similar sensibilities of one of my closest friends who doesn't live near me told me about it, and sometimes I listen to her, sometimes I don't. And I listened to her, and then 2 days later, after a lot of sleepless nights, I finished the whole thing in like 2 days. I think it's just one of those shows where everything just clicks really well. I think it's got, obviously, the writing. It starts with Bevan Lee. His writing's fantastic. I think the acting is just, the casting is phenomenal, and it's addictive. It's just, it just works. At the beginning, I thought it was really predictable, but it's not necessarily predictable. It's smart. It's just a great show. It's fun to watch. I wish more people did know about it. I know it's got a huge following, but I tell a lot of people to watch it. I mean, here in the States, Acorn's like $5 a month, so it's basically a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like just, it's 1 cup of coffee a month to watch the show. So that's my 2 cents.
Brett, if you stop and think about it, 144 countries. I don't even know how many countries there are in the world, but I am told by people who keep track of these things that it is being seen by somebody in 144 countries. I can single out some countries where it's extremely popular. It's extremely popular in Holland. It's extremely popular in Israel. It's extremely popular in Britain. I think other than the Americans, the fastest growing, the fast numbers of members that we have, we're growing at 100 new members a week. It is phenomenal. More and more people are seeing it, and it's quite extraordinary. But these are people who can't get along about anything. They fight about politics. They fight about who should be allowed to get married. They fight about all kinds of things. Why are they drawn to this show?
Universal theme, Susan. The human condition. And the thing is, it's 1950, and look at the world today. We're still fighting over the same things. So that's what makes it relevant. And I think well-written drama. That's why I often get asked, "Are you surprised that it's resonated internationally?" And I think no, because it resonated in our country, and it sort of devoted itself to entertaining intelligence, and treated the audience with respect. and so it didn't surprise me that, you know, other people around the world would be, you know, I mean, I'm grateful, and I'm it's wonderful, but it didn't surprise me, because well-written drama is like that. It attracts intelligence, and it treats the audience, as I say, in an intelligent fashion. It's a truly international production, and those themes that you mentioned, as I say, they're relevant in the 50s and they're relevant now. Gosh, in our country right now, you probably know that, you know, we're having a vote for gay marriage, and there's a section of our present government. There's a section of it, and they tend to be men of a certain age that are opposing this. They'll throw anything at this to try and get a no vote, and it's just astounding in this day and age for me that you know, you still have this. And I really hope I'm not being disrespectful to anyone else's point of view. But
I think
no,
most of us share your view.
I am respectful of everyone's point of view, but not when you're trying to impose a point of view on someone. I think that's what's happening in this country. And you kind of think, literally, you would think you're in the 1950s right now. You know, we had some friends from the States visit us recently from California, and they couldn't believe the standard, the level of our public dialogue regarding this issue. It's embarrassing. I mean, and we actually, and the group that I'm talking about in government, you know, they have flyers that actually have families in front, you know, behind picket fences, you know, saying this is the world, you know, that we should still be living like we were back then. It was better back then. You know, it frustrates me. And yes, there were lovely moments of the 50s, without a doubt, and that's what we like our show, because I like playing those values and those sensitivities. But also, come on, we can also move ahead. So I think that's what Bevan had in mind too. He wanted to highlight the fact, you know, how far have we come? You know, I just mentioned in the new season that we're tackling the Indigenous issue of acceptance, and goodness me, we only last week there was a bill that was rejected to give the Indigenous community their own voice, their own forum to make decisions for themselves, and it was rejected by our government. Goodness me.
Can you explain how this vote works? People had to mail in, but even if there's a majority, Parliament can make it null and void. Is that correct?
Yes. So we can't even call it a plebiscite, because it's not compulsory. Well, it's not compulsory to vote as such. So it is through the mail, and it's non-binding. However, the current Prime Minister has said that he will adhere to the result, but there is this group I'm talking about that they will throw anything, even if it's and at the moment I think it's polling at about 64%. Yes, they're still throwing in all sorts of issues not related to actual gay marriage, but they're throwing in other issues, how this is going to divide the family, the repercussions for, you know, if a priest doesn't want to actually marry two gay people, can he be sued? They're looking at any issue to cloud what we're talking about. Any issue, basically, to put a stop to it. And of course, we've come to this point because the government didn't have the courage to do what they're elected to do, which is actually make a decision. That's why we elect these people. And if they know that 64% of the population, there's been polling throughout the past 5 years saying this is what our country wants, but the Prime Minister didn't have the courage to do it. So the dinosaurs that I'm talking about in his party, pushed for this postal vote, knowing that the majority of the younger generation, who are going to be the future voters, those people don't even open a letter. You know, This thing could have been done online. It could have had a much wider audience, but they knew that by doing it this way, they may, preclude a certain group of people who are obviously going to vote yes from voting. Now, fortunately, it hasn't turned out that way. In fact, they had record numbers of young people enrolling to vote. And of course, it will come back to bite them in the future, because those very same people that are voting yes for this postal vote are going to be voting no for that government in a few years' time. So, but I still see that it's a long journey ahead. That's for sure. I hope I've explained that in a sort of
Now I understand it.
yeah.
You don't feel like you're the only one. Have you heard what's going on in our country?
Yeah. Who do you mean?
No
Yeah.
politics, but yeah, it seems to be a pattern in more than one place. Unfortunately, it's happening where I live, so I'm really concerned.
Susan, you're in New York,
Right. Yes.
so I've got to pass my my thoughts on what happened. 24 hours ago was
well,
devastating.
I will tell you that I know exactly that stretch of the city. It's a place that I frequent often. There, but for the grace of God, go I. It could have been another day, and it could have been me. But this is so. It is so personal. It is just when it happens in your backyard, when you go to the city the next day and you see the remnants of this terrible, just horrific thing that happened. I've had a stomach ache since I heard the news. That's how personally I take it. But having said that, my concern is that these things happen so often that maybe we are becoming desensitized to it. They had a big a big Halloween parade last night, and the mayor had the option to cancel it. And he and the police chief, they all got together and said, "No, we're not gonna." We're not going to let it stop us. And millions of people marched down Fifth Avenue. But the fact is that it happened. And every time it happens, we should all be horrified. And we need to do something about it. And I think the best thing that we can do is live positive lives in our own little corner and hope that everybody else follows suit. But it's a terrible thing to live at a time where that we're so hated for something that none of us understand. And as a Jew, when the Holocaust is... I'm a fifth-generation American, so I didn't experience the Holocaust. However, I am a Jew, and I was the only kid in my 16-student class that didn't have at least one parent who had a concentration camp number. So when these kinds of things happen, you're right. You know what? Things haven't changed so much since the 50s. No. The only thing is now that we have the internet and the world is a smaller place. I didn't mean to go off, but you asked about about New York.
Would you mind if I made a comment on
please do.
I think the worst thing that we can do, and what troubled me on our news this morning, and I know everyone's down on Trump and whatever, but I don't want to just hop on that. However, what I didn't want to see was his tweets saying that the system is this is why the system's bad. The green card thing, we're going to cancel the green, but this is why this is why it's bad, and this is why I'm here, because I'm going to make it right. And once again, you've got an administration that sees that gains strength in the negative. So there's a negative message there that that America is basically stuffed, but he's going to make it okay. And this is the reason it's stuffed, because of that dreadful tragedy. And that's the last thing that you need, is to you get political mileage out of this type of thing. And that just appalled me when I saw that. And in a way, the tragedy is appalling, Susan. Without a doubt, it's absolutely appalling. And equally, what's bad is that people will use it for political advantage to make a statement about the state of affairs, and how, bring in these measures that, we've been campaigning on, and this is the very reason we need to do it, because look what just happened. And it's just, that's not the way to approach it. We'll have the same on the far right saying the same thing in this country as well. And that's simply not the way to do it. I don't know what the answer is, by the way, but it isn't that negative approach.
Brett, first, I want to thank you so much on behalf of everybody. I feel like I've really gotten a chance to know you, and in turn, that will allow me to understand your work even more. I understand why you are so well loved, and enjoy your status as a terrific working actor, and we appreciate it. Can you say, this is a chance, you've got 5,000 people who are going to want to hear what you have to say to them. So could I get you to speak to the group?
We never take for granted your support, and we don't. We feel cherished. We feel lucky, I always say that I have so much enjoyment from doing something that I love so much, but knowing that people love watching it so much. There's just a lovely balance to that, because I suppose that's why we produce this, so that we want to please people. But no, just gratitude, and I just never take it for granted. I mean, I don't take it for granted. So thank you. And Susan, I think I've got a special thank you to you, and for what you've done over the course of the last few years. It's quite extraordinary when I looked at the figures and the numbers, what you've achieved, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Brett. Thank you for your time tonight. And most of all, thank you for your very, very fine work that we look forward to and enjoy. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for being present with us at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Be well, everybody.
Well, thank you, I know, but I didn't mean it.
It was great. Thank you, Brett. Be well.
Good night.